Hey there, Wastelanders! This is the second scenario of the Battle for Saugus Ironworks mini-campaign for Fallout Wasteland Warfare. I'm playing through this campaign using the forces of the Forged Raiders and going up against different lists that are primarily controlled by the Wasteland Warfare AI. This scenario is Robot Rampage. From the scenario description, it says, "With the doors open, it's time to look around. The main area of the ironworks is a cavernous room filled with conveyor belts, rusting machinery, and old computers, all dimly lit by the furnace glow and a few flickering fluorescent strip lights." Huh? A noise draws his attention away from the shop floor. It seems the enemy has found their own way into the ironworks, as if the beating they had doled out wasn't enough. Time to make it stick. Suddenly, a robotic voice cracks into life.
"Engaging multiple hostiles. This is a lawful use of deadly force."
Having broken into the ironworks, your efforts to secure the area and start looking for resources are interrupted by both the arrival of your rival gang and the attention of a roving Protectron robot. So, that's the situation. We are trying to secure this factory floor. In the center of the map, we have a somewhat frazzled Protectron guard. At the beginning of each turn, we'll roll a luck die to determine if they're under control of our side or the AI opponents. There are 3 terminals across the map. To capture a terminal, a model has to get into base contact with it and then pass either an intelligence test or a use computers check. To win the scenario, one side has to have the majority of the tokens captured when they're all removed, or eliminate all of the other side's models. This is an interesting way to phrase the rule, because it means that one side could capture 2 terminals, but if the third one is uncaptured, then there is still time for the other side to win. Is this foreshadowing? Well, we'll see. The Protectron is a factory-fresh model with all the bells and whistles. It's got a ton of HP and heavy armor, and the Protectron hand laser, which can hit hard when it does hit. The Forged Force is being led by Slag's second-in-command, Bedlam. She's got her usual incendiary super sledge, which gets to benefit from the Forged faction rule. Since it can cause fire damage, she counts as being specialized with it, which gives her a +2 bonus. She also has the Berserker Leader perk, which gives her an armor token, but also gives most of the units in this force access to Battle Cry, which can let you gain both a green and a black die when you charge. She's also relatively smart and can use computers, and has the best chance in this force at capturing terminals. Jake Finch is along for the ride as well. He's got his signature shish kebab sword, which hasn't been stolen by Slag yet. His HP and armor are both abysmal, so he's got some sturdy metal armor on to hopefully keep him up and running for a bit longer. We also have a generic Forged with a Flamer, which benefits from the faction rule as well. For some range support, we also have 2 Scaver Outlaws armed with submachine guns. They're also pretty good at computers, on par with Jake and only 1 point below Bedlam. Rounding out the force, in typical Raider fashion, we have a pair of Psychos, each with a pipe wrench and a dose of fury each. They also have a single Molotov to split between them. After fighting off the Institute last time outside the Ironworks, it only makes sense that we go up against the Railroad once we get inside. To keep things easy for myself, their force is relatively straightforward. Mr. Timms leads the group carrying his signature .44 revolver. Since computer skills are required for this mission, Tinker Tom has joined, along with Dr. Carrington. They are both carrying Institute laser pistols. To add some brawn to the brains, they are joined by 3 railroad heavies with railway rifles, which they have a specialty with. If you're running the math on the points at home and notice a discrepancy between the 2 forces, don't worry. These lists were built before the latest points update, and I forgot to rebalance them before putting them down on the table. They were balanced at one point though, so feel free to take solace in that knowledge. Tinker Tom has the Modder ability, which lets him draw 3 random mods and attach them to equipment before the game. The way I resolve this ability is to create a deck of all usable mods first and pick from that. It's still random, but you know it'll be beneficial in some way. He draws Powerful, Comfort Grip, and Reflex sights. Since only the heavies have rifles, one of them gets to upgrade their railway rifle to be powerful. Same thing for Reflex sights, as none of the pistols carried by the Railroad Force even have a long-range band. Tom takes the Comfort Grip for himself. You never know when you're going to need that bonus. The Railroad forces split between 3 rough groups. Tinker Tom going for the left objective, Mr. Timms going for the closest one, and Dr. Carrington set up to use his higher movement speed to make a play for the further one. Each of the heroes is backed up by a heavy. The Forged follow a similar pattern. Bedlam keeps a Psycho and the generic Forge close by to shoot for the middle objective. The two Scaver Outlaws are set to go for the closer objective with their decent-ish computer skills. On the right flank, Jake and the other Psycho plan to rush forward and cause chaos. With all the pieces set, the first round begins. The rules didn't specify this interaction, but I opted to determine advantage before rolling for which side the Protectron would fight for. For turn 1, it falls under the Railroad's control. That technically brings the Mal count to be even, but when figuring it out before the roll, the Railroad had fewer, so it also starts with advantage. So the Railroad goes first, and the Heavy that has the powerful railway rifle pushes up into cover. On the Forged side, one of the Psychos readies up. Tinker Tom activates next and heads off towards his designated terminal. He can't quite reach it this turn, so he opts to stay well behind cover. The generic Forged readies up next on the Raider side. Next up is one of the other Railroad Heavies, who gets into a nice secure position for providing overwatch to the terminals. One of the Scaver Outlaws gets ready to roll. Then the final Railroad Heavy also advances into cover. Bedlam herself readies up next. She has an ability that triggers when multiple friendly units engage alongside her, so this is just the calm before the storm. Mr. Timms moves up as well. He can't quite get to the terminal, but is able to stick in very good cover for the time being. The second Scaver readies up next. At this point, the Raiders could go, but why bother when you can just wait until the AI is done with its first turn moves and then react to their final positioning. Gotta keep some advantages over our future robot overlords. Dr. Carrington takes advantage of his red move distance to rush forward. He's in contact with the closer terminal, which is supposedly for Mr. Timms to take, but if he can snake it on his way past, that won't hurt. The final Psycho readies up. The Railroad activates the Protectron, which moves up and takes a long bomb shot at Bedlam, which misses by a country mile. Jake Finch is the last one on the Raider side to ready up, and with that, we are ready to go. As Bedlam activates, she uses her Teamwork special rule to hand out some boost tokens to nearby friendlies. The Psycho picks up an extra yellow die, and the generic Forged and the closer Scaver Outlaw both take a green. Then, Bedlam jets forward to try to secure the objective. Jake does as well. He's joined by one of the Psychos, who pops their Fury drugs for some bonus armor. The second Psycho also pops their drugs and runs up, pushing past the Protectron to threaten Tinker Tom and Dr. Carrington, daring one of them to move up. The first Scaver Outlaw moves up to the ramp and makes a play for the closer objective. The second one does as well. The generic Forged moves up as well, just sort of waiting to see where their flamer will be the most effective. With turn 1 wrapped up, everyone's in position and ready for a bloody turn 2. The Railroad retain the advantage marker, and also control over the Protectron. They're the more tech-savvy faction, so this isn't a huge surprise, narratively. The furthest east Railroad Heavy activates first, and crit fails to hit the Psycho. His second shot also crit fails. Clearly, his railway rifle hasn't quite pulled into the station yet. The Raiders send in one of the Scaver Outlaws to snag the objective, but with a computer skill of 5, a roll of 6 is not enough. Tinker Tom gets the early lead though, picking up the middle objective without breaking a sweat. The Psycho in the middle of the field rushes Dr. Carrington to tie him up and prevent him from scoring a second objective. The bonus dice from the charge and Bedlam's teamwork ability are completely wasted though, as their attack crit fails out. They are still useful though, as they perform a shift move to get around Carrington and block off the terminal from further easy access. The Protectron gets activated next, and attempts to put some shots into Bedlam before she pulverizes Tinker Tom. The first shot goes wide, and so does the second. You definitely can't always trust pre-war technology to be effective. The second Psycho charges into Mr. Timms and rolls an astounding hit, with 4 damage and an armor break. The black die here is from the charge, and the green die is just representing the +1 damage that's added to melee attacks from the Fury drugs. Tim's armor fails him, and he takes all 4 damage, 2/3 of his health gone straight away. Since he can't interact with this terminal while engaged with the Psycho, Carrington makes a break for the other objective and takes a 3 damage thunk in the back as his parting gift. He can't get to the terminal and try to unlock it this turn though, so he takes a shot at the Scaver Outlaw, but misses entirely. Maybe pushing up wasn't the best idea. Seeing an opportunity to contribute, the generic Forged heads up to hose Tinker Tom down with some fire. They pick a spot slightly behind him as the target so as not to catch Bedlam in the splash. A 7 would not be good enough usually, but with a -2 rolled on the effect die and the bonus they get from their specialty, the attack connects. Tom's armor gets broken away, so he takes 3 damage. Fortunately for him though, he avoids getting ignited. Mr. Tim is an expert at using pistols in melee, so he tries to get some damage into the Psycho who just walloped him. His first attack is a sad miss. The second attack connects, but with the extra drug-fueled armor, the Psycho avoids taking any damage. The other Scaver Outlaw tries to access the computer terminal from the exposed conveyor belt, but even with the bonus green die from the teamwork ability, they can't crack the password. The Heavy with the powerful railway rifle moves up and sinks a heavy shot into the now unengaged Psycho's chest. 4 total damage, and the armor break means that the 4 rolled on the amber die does nothing. So instead of blocking it all, the Psycho takes all 4 of those damage and drops in a single hit. I've never been a huge fan of the powerful mod, since it limits the number of shots you can take, but this is a pretty powerful argument in its favor. Bedlam takes her turn, charging the final few inches into Tinker Tom and swinging away with her incendiary super sledge, only to whiff out. The final Railroad Heavy moves into the melee with Mr. Tims and the Psycho and uses their rifle in melee to avoid hitting Tims. He hits despite the penalty and gets 1 point of damage on the surviving Psycho. Jake Finch wraps things up by falling just short of getting to the terminal in 1 move, and he needs to use the second to get into contact with it. Mediocre. And a bloody turn 2 it was. One of the Psychos is already down, but Tims, Carrington, and Tinker Tom are already pretty battered. The Railroad has secured 1 terminal, so could seal the win pretty easily if they got the second, but only if the Raiders also get one first. So we'll see how the next turn plays out. For turn 3, the Forged actually get the advantage, as they lost a model while the Railroad did not. They don't get control of the Protectron though. Taking advantage of having the advantage, Jake Finch tries to secure one of the objectives and gets locked out with a critical fail. Well done, boyo. What a real solid recruit right there. Trying to redeem himself, Jake takes a shot at Tinker Tom with his 10mm pistol, and hits Bedlam instead. She has a strong armor token, so shrugs off the hit, but he's definitely not making any friends in this Raider gang with how this turn has gone so far. The Railroad Heavy engaged with the Psycho tries to get some more damage through to try and help Mr. Tims out, but his first shot goes wide, and his second shot goes even wider. Not a great start to the turn for either side. It takes 2 attempts, but the Scaver Outlaw finally unlocks the terminal they're sitting in front of, so now it's a race to see who can score the final terminal, or just wipe out the other side. The Heavy with the powerful railway rifle drills a shot into Jake, who rolls 1 armor block and takes 2 damage. Now is when a follow-up shot would have been nice, but doesn't happen. The second Scaver Outlaw is up next, and drops Carrington in a barrage of submachine gun fire. She tries to go for MVP to shoot down Tinker Tom as well, but ends up accidentally putting 2 damage into Bedlam instead. If anyone makes it back to the Raider camp tonight, there will be some very serious discussions about checking your fields of fire. The final Railroad Heavy takes some shots into Jake Finch as well. Their first shot hits for 3 damage, but his armor blocks 2, so he only takes 1. The second shot is the finisher though. 3 damage and a flubbed, off-camera armor roll knocks Jake out of the engagement. Deciding to get their swats in before Mr. Tims can engage, the remaining Psycho activates and completely whiffs on their first attack. The second one connects though, and with the armor break and the extra damage from the Fury drugs, Mr. Tims is out of commission. The Heavy that just dropped Jake takes a reaction shot, but ends up hitting their buddy, putting 2 damage onto them instead. The Protectron goes next and charges into the melee with Bedlam and Tinker Tom so that Tom can get away without taking a parting shot. The bot gets a completely unexpected hit on Bedlam in melee with its laser and rolls an amazing -6 amongst its effect dice. Only 1 damage goes through though, but everyone on the Railroad side is just impressed that it hit at all. Bedlam tries to seal the deal on Tinker Tom, as removing the Railroad's best high-int character might give them a good chance to secure the win. However, her first swing crit fails. The second one also fails, but with an action point to prepare, so things are not looking good for the Raiders. Tom scoots away, and Bedlam flubs her parting attack roll. She wants to charge after Tom, but since she's still engaged with the Protectron, she can't use her prepared token to do that. You can't charge out of a melee. so she has to use a regular quick action move, which doesn't get her into contact with Tinker Tom. To add insult to injury, the Protectron does score its parting attack, dealing 2 more damage to the beleaguered raider. With Tom's second action, he gets into base contact with the final terminal. The generic Forge moves up and lets loose another stream of flame into Tinker Tom. It hits and breaks all his armor, but with only 2 damage, it's not enough to drop him. Turn 3 draws to a close, and things are looking pretty dire for the Raiders. They knocked out Mr. Timms and Dr. Carrington, but Tinker Tom has slipped through their fingers and is in prime position to secure the final objective. As turn 4 starts, the Raiders finally gain control of the Protectron for all the good that's going to do them. If I were following the strict rules of how the AI is activated, I would have randomized which railroad unit would go first. However, in a situation like this, I feel like it's more fair to act like a player would and simply activate the unit that has a chance to win the game for the AI side, even to my own detriment. I hope the robots remember this when the revolution comes. So Tinker Tom activates first and claims the third objective on his first try, winning the scenario for the railroad. And that's it for this scenario. I feel like, just like with the last one from this pack, that the scenario objectives were a little too easy to score a win from, but maybe that's just because the forces are handpicked to be good at that type of situation. Also, frankly, the railroad kind of deserved that win. The Raiders flubbed numerous opportunities that would have swung things back in their direction and failed to capitalize on those chances. It's going to be rough to report the results back to Slag, though. We hope you've enjoyed this battle report, and keep an eye out for the final one in this mini-campaign coming soon. Stay safe out there in the wasteland.